Chapter 90. It takes us only 2 days of hard riding to head north up to Lake Michigan, then east until we reach Detroit. Melatonin, Frost, and 3 of his men ride by day while Melusan and I slumber. By night, the roles are reversed, and since we use lesser nightmares to pull the carriage, we manage not to stop. During the trip, I learned from Melatonin that she expects the city master to be somewhat hostile, which does not surprise me in the slightest. We arrive in Detroit from the south in the early evening of the second day. Detroit is old, older than most cities I have been to. It was named for the river it borders. The house is lined along ridges that start at the shore and extend north. As soon as we enter the city, I turn right to take in the piers. It does not take me long. To my surprise, Detroit is fairly small with a population barely reaching 2,500. Many of the edifices are made of wood, while Alexandria and Washington had favored bricks. We pass a few groups of late-night pedestrians trudging in the dirty snow, who eye us suspiciously, and mutter in low voices in French, English, German, and sometimes even Irish brogue until we step on the embankment. The Detroit River flows languidly before us, its placid waters clear enough to reflect the buildings above and surprisingly unfrozen. I spot canals leading into the city bordered by trees. It feels peaceful and, have you seen enough? Can we go now? A voice interrupts. I turn to Frost with a glare, but he just shrugs. This is not the liquid I am interested in. And before you ask, no, I am not talking about booze. What are you talking about then? Maple syrup. Behind him, Melatonin takes a dreamy expression as she gathers her heavy cloak around herself. What is maple syrup? I ask, wondering if they are mocking me with made-up products. You have never tried it? Oh, you poor thing. Frost exclaims in mock horror. It is as if the gods had shared ambrosia with us. It is as sweet as honey, it flows like water and tastes like heaven. I am surprised that you did not take the opportunity to try it. I assure you that my change was not planned, I hiss in a low tone. Melatonin frowns at the old man, who bows his head in apology. Once more, I am amazed at how quickly he can switch from old rogue to kind grandfather in a single heartbeat. Even his aura reflects this to an extent, currently crisp when he could be glacial. Ariane. Melusan interjects. Yes, I feel them too. Lady and gentlemen, we have company. I turn Metis back and we move towards the center of the city, leaving the carriage and Frost's men slightly behind. 3 vampires step forward to intercept us from around the bend of the road, appearing from behind a snow-covered hedge. The one in the middle has sandy hair and traits a bit too sharp to be truly handsome. He is glaring fiercely, dressed in an elegant if incongruous dark ensemble that would belong more in a salon than outside in the heart of winter. The second man, to the right, follows the first with the respect and attention I associate with courtiers serving their sire. He has dark brown hair and a pencil-thin mustache that Loth would say he tolerates in his women. Both show the muscle structures of fencers and the overconfidence of bravos. The third person is clearly an outsider from her posture. She is beautiful with very dark curly hair and exceptionally pale skin, even for a vampire. She looks guarded and steps just a bit behind the rest of the trio. She seems familiar for some reason. All 3 have the aura of the Roland, which is a slight unyielding quality. Only the central figure is a master, and he is currently flaring his power in a display at the very limit of politeness. And when did you plan on greeting the master of the city, I wonder? The leader asks with disdain. Or at least he tries to. Vampires, just like mortals, are susceptible to visual cues. Anyone on foot trying to look down on me while I am on Metis will only get a sore neck. In the silence that follows, Metis snorts and Xana, Melusan's nightmare, quickly follows suit. I intentionally wait for a few seconds to pass in silence before replying in a cool voice. So kind of you to come and greet us, City Master Mornay. Save your breath, Devour. I do not appreciate my clan overstepping its authority on my domain, nor did I ask for one of Constantine's hounds. Assist, if you must, but know that I do not need you to get rid of pests. He turns to his side to look at the woman with some contempt. Blake here will explain where the beasts can be found, won't you, Blake? Yes, Mornay. Good. And with this, the man dismisses us and turns to leave. City Master, Melatonin erupts in a low voice, "Are you not forgetting something? Watch your tone, servant, I do not take orders from the likes of you. You forget yourself, Mornay. You either respect our agreement or I ride back to Boston and your next visitor will be significantly less accommodating." Mornay turns once more, his face twisted in a grimace of rage. He flexes his hands, claws eager to rend and punish but with no real outlet. Melatonin is completely beyond his reach. "Very well. Blake, please lead them to the Madison Hotel and make the necessary arrangements. Goodbye." 1 minute later, only a slightly nervous courtier remains on the muddy ground, and I observe an interesting phenomenon I did not expect to see from her clan. Blake is now looking to the side and downward in a somewhat bashful pose, and Frost as well as the other men guarding the carriage are showing concern and even sympathy for her. I can tell that she is not using her essence, therefore the strange magnetism she emits is only a product of her natural charisma and beauty. "Right. Follow me," she grumbles. I dismount out of politeness and soon all the others follow suit. As I walk by her side, she inspects me warily and I simply let her. We proceed in silence in a street running parallel to the river, then left towards the center of the town and up a small hill before stopping next to a 3-story edifice, still in wood, lit by bright light. When we enter, Blake excuses herself for a moment and soon after several staff come to take care of everyone. Melusan and I are led into a small dependence surrounded by a garden and hidden from view by tall walls. There is only one floor arranged as a large salon with a hearth, seats and a small library. Blake wordlessly pulls a carpet from the ground to reveal a stone trapdoor surrounded by crappy enchantments the likes of which I would not use to secure a larder. "Here we are," she announces. Since I am a master perfectly in control of my emotions, I do not start insulting her and her hospitality right away. "Are you jesting?" Melusan asks coldly. The shelter is well hidden and the family who owns the land has served Master Mornay for generations, the woman replies somewhat defensively. Melusan and I stare in silence. All right, so the man is a miser and he never expected to have guests. Happy? If it's any comfort, my own chamber is even worse. Now finally, we are going somewhere. You seem familiar. Have we met before? I ask before Melusan starts a tirade. Blake pouts, which even I find attractive. We met at the manor. I was looking for a place to settle. Oh, yes, I remember now. You were that vampire in a red dress I came across a few times. That was my only decent dress. It did not work so well in the end, she sighs dejectedly. Melusan frowns, but she must also realize that we may have found our only ally in this place. By silent agreement, we all sit around a rickety coffee table while Melusan lights all the candles in the room with a snap from her fingers. I will never admit to being impressed by this trick. I will, however, keep it in mind as a gloating tool. Then you only joined this coven recently. And so did the other two. This place is the ass end of nowhere, so it did not justify our presence at all. The most exciting things around are riots and epidemics. You do not seem pleased with the arrangements. Cut the crap. I fled here and this is the only coven that would take me in, and then only because they needed a third member to be called a coven in the first place. Is it difficult to find a territory? I ask, not understanding. Maybe not for you, Devourer, but us who belong to a clan with a local presence have to bend to the rules or be outcast, and I am not exactly the lone survivor type. I do not mean to insult your competence. But what stops you from claiming some frontier town and building a base there, I ask. Simple, my dear. I'm broke. Absolutely broke. Red dress, remember? Ah. My dealings with the Rosenthal proved salutary during my exile. Without a starting capital, it would have been both difficult and risky to start the dream from scratch. I would have had to steal. I mean, steal even more. Yes, Ariane. Please do not lose yourself in the memories of your own abject poverty. We are here with a purpose, remember? Ah yes. The werewolves. Quite. Blake, Can you tell us more about the situation? Blake removes her hood completely and stretches. I recognize the kind of things we do to center ourselves, though we no longer have the biological need for it. Melusan and I wait in silence. What do you know? Werewolves bad. Many werewolves worse. Go kill, I summarize laconically. Melusan shows fangs, but Blake smiles a bit. She is a young one, I can tell. We should summon Frost and Melatonin. I do not feel like hearing this tale twice, the redhead advises. I agree and call a member of the staff to request their presence. After a few minutes, they join us, gathering around the table with warm drinks. Frost also picks a plate with what appears to be toast that was liberally drowned in some amber liquid which, I will admit, gives off an enticing perfume. Once everyone is settled, Blake begins her tale. 3 weeks ago, we cornered and executed a werewolf who had come to stay in our town. We didn't think much of it until 2 more came looking for him. We killed them as well, only to realize that a 4th one had been staying at the edge of town. He fled before we could track him down, and we lost his trace at the river. So far, nothing too abnormal besides the high number. The loyalists we charged with disposing of the bodies informed us that they found matching tattoos on the victims. 2 jagged black lines to be precise. A stylized mountain. It would make sense if this truly is the Black Peak Pack. Every new piece of evidence hints at a danger the likes of which we have never faced, and I am at the front line with only a pair of disputable allies. How I wish Taran were here instead of Melusan, and I would not mind backup from Jimena, Nami or John either. We also found maps. I must have reacted to that last sentence, because Melusan turns to me, soon imitated by the rest of the table. Maps are used to wage war. You dedicate teams to making maps when you plan an invasion, I explain, relaying a lesson taught by Loth. But surely, Blake intervenes, they could just ask for maps at the city hall? I learned that Melusan's way of conveying deep contempt is to slowly blink. We ignore her naive remark and move on with the conversation. Since last week, the werewolves have returned. There are more of them and they stay far away during the night. We only smell them at the edge of our territory. I wince at the memory of werewolves. They possess an innate vitality that makes them particularly appetizing to me, yet there is no denying that they have a peculiar musk which we find irritating. I remember having trouble tolerating the only werewolf I ever was on speaking terms with, the man named Alistair Locke. Every whiff of his scent would wake up my instincts and push me to track the intruder and slay him, even though he was a guest and never displayed any sign of aggression. Have you tried having your humans track them? No, Blake replies, Mornay has too few followers and none of them are fighters. He would not shed their blood by sending them against such foes. I see, I reply, turning to Frost. Yes, we have a way to track them using special charms sensitive to smells and specific auras. I would prefer if you were with us when we engage, however. There will be no engagement, I say, interrupting them. Melatonin frowns, uncomprehending. What do you mean? The mission objectives are to find and identify the primary threat. Frost will be in charge of finding their tracks and will stay at a distance. When night falls, we will join you and follow them to their base. Then, we will learn the true extent of this new threat. We will not waste time going after the small fry. So you do believe in the existence of some sort of werewolf alliance? Melusan asks with some doubt. Maps? Coordination? Matching tattoos? What more do you need? The Lancaster has no answer, and for the first time since we began, I see the tiniest hint of concern in the way her eyes narrow ever so slightly. That works for me. I'll leave Duke with you, he can use a messenger spell. That will save us a lot of effort. We conclude the council quickly with Blake being tasked with finding the maps for us to peruse. Melatonin politely requests an interview and I follow her to her room while Frost and his men do some emergency work on our vault entrance. What is it? I ask as she closes the door behind her. She left her luggage half open near a narrow bed and her perfume already permeates the place, soothing me a bit. It appears that Mornay has elected not to cooperate with you in any meaningful way. I am allowed to share with you that he does not know the stakes you have in our arrangement. Do you mean? Yes, he is unaware that Lazaro and yourself are competing for control, otherwise he would have been even more obnoxious. Make sure that he does not figure it out or he could make unreasonable demands. I will be sure to let the others know. Good. The second point is that Jimena is close by. I smile at this. You are not supposed to know, Melitone warns me, and any help you receive from her would affect your final score if you ask for it against my dear brother's orders. I just wanted you to know in case the threat is just as dire as you seem to believe. Right. But if she happens to come upon us, then it will be a lucky happenstance. Oh, I can produce lucky happenstances, not to worry. Do you really think there is a werewolf army? Melitone suddenly asks. I realize that I am not sure. Hope for the best, plan for the worst, I answer noncommittally. In any case, we will keep you safe. Good to know. All right, thank you for letting me know, and in case it was not clear, I am rooting for you. With that polite dismissal, I take my leave and return to our salon. Melusine and I spend the rest of the night exploring the vicinity, and I find myself enjoying my trips over snow-covered roofs. Despite our efforts, we find nothing. The werewolf maps are also of little help besides proving their complete lack of cartographic and artistic skills. With dawn approaching, we retire to our significantly improved vault. The following day, my mental fortress. I come to in my palatial bedroom, surrounded by pillows artfully arranged under a canopy that defies physics. On both sides of the vast bed, pedestals hold mementos and baubles, each one corresponding to a specific memory. Somebody is knocking. I walk out through a labyrinth of rooms and down the monumental stairs and into the inner courtyard. Great statues of creatures and men I have slain alternate with trees of strange essence, most bearing thorns. In the dark celestial vault above, the watcher moves, more agitated than usual. Down into the garden I go, through hidden passages and illusions. Here and there, more statues appear. They are one of the defenses with the flora, and though no one has tried to attack my mind recently, whoever shall do so now will have a terrible time of it. Then I will kill them. The knocks stop, to be replaced by chimes, which is quite novel. I soon reach the edge of the forest surrounding my domain. As before, it is made of thorny roots and trunks densely interwoven, sure to shred any intruder to the bone. With a small push from my will, the curtain parts and a figure glides in with a beatific smile. "Oh, good day. Lovely place you have there," she exclaims in a chipper tone. Sometimes, I think Violet was never meant to wake. She is not like those birds who are terribly awkward on land but incomparably graceful while in the air. The curious thing is that her hair is still tousled, but here, in her dreams, it moves and merges into different styles according to her mood. Her clothes flow, sometimes as broad as a medieval gown and sometimes tight and scandalously vaporous. Patterns of color appear and disappear on it according to her mood, and sometimes, motes of light like glittering butterflies pop out as she speaks, like now. Violet giggles. "What an incredible house. Please be sure to give me a tour of the garden before I depart." I cannot help but smile as the strange lady jumps into the air and on top of a werewolf statue, the dress immediately turning to petticoat to protect her virtue. For an instant gravity lost its grasp on the woman and the thorny branches around her grew small white flowers. "Ooh, amazing. Ha ha. Violet," I interrupt with a chuckle, "the messages?" "Ah yes. Quite a hassle that was," she adds, still looking around while balanced on the tip of her toes of a single foot. Her visage seemingly radiates from the inside, and her soft beauty is now made manifest through the serenity and joy that animate it. The difference is truly breathtaking. Then the bubbly fairy is gone as she stands straight, still on my statue, and closes her eyes. Her dress morphs into a toga of the purest white, with golden jewelries encircling her wrists and ankles. Her hair tightens itself into an elaborate braid that would require an hour and the efforts of two people to recreate in reality. I summoned both Sinead and Safar in the same space, and they talked for 3 hours. I will not elaborate on the level of detail in which Sinead went, Just know that even Safar was intimidated by the depth and breadth of his questioning. She begins in a steady voice. I failed to understand the reason for many of them, and Safar asked me to inform you that Sanayad was dangerous, she continues, looking down to me. A part of me is bothered to be the one to look up, but the greater part is just amused at her antics, and glad to see her stretch her wings. A mortal who was bashful and possibly lonely has now bloomed into the incredible talent I knew her to be. I am only too glad to give her recognition for it. I already knew he was a dangerous man, I reply. At this she blushes. Seriously? Violet? It was only in a dream, I swear. Oh, that scandalous cad. Giving me inflamed declaration and then robbing my newest plaything of her virtue the following day? I know that Lycians have different customs, but surely this is slap-worthy. No? Not to worry, Violet, you are not the first to fall to his ploys, I tell her with gritted teeth. Oh, I know, only a man with experience could be so incredible. I face palm. Sorry. Beyond the fact that I would kill him in the heat of passion, this is another reason why it would not work between us. Sanayad is part of a culture that does not even consider monogamy, and I do not see myself sharing. I especially do not see myself playing second fiddle to Savea, or anyone else for that matter. With a last shake of my head, I banish from my thoughts the possibility that I banish any thoughts, at all. By the Watcher, I miss Tauran. If he were around, I would not even look at another man. Moving on, I continue. Sanayad asked some questions. What then? He made some arrangements to move towards York, then disappeared with around $1,000 from your coffers. Ouch. Well, we will see if this leads anywhere. If not, I will take the compensation out of his hide. What do you have to report besides that? Lady Safar gave us the location and timing of the Cadiz supply route. As far as we can tell, they are respecting the limitations the speaker put upon them. Sanayad said you should not worry about them and focus on your own thing. I see. The last important piece of news is that you have 15 men from your odd squad and 5 mages of the White Cabal on the way. They have orders to stop 30 miles from Detroit and to find a town to hole up in. We are having some difficulties moving around due to the inclement weather, so you shouldn't expect them before a week. A whole week. That is all. Now is my turn to keep my allies informed. I share my findings, such as they are, with Violet, who has instructions to relay them to Merit and whoever commands the approaching detachment. After this is finished, I oblige and allow Violet to follow me around. We walk the maze, the gardens and the inner court, but stop at the edge of the manor proper. I will not follow you inside, it would not be proper, she says while shaking her head. What do you mean? I ask with surprise. This is your sanctum. It contains all the memories and emotions you hold dear and will be your last redoubt if anyone tries to break into your mind. What, you mean with magic? She nods. Precisely. Not that it would be a good idea for them. Your defenses are formidable. You must have worked on this mind palace for a long time. 30 years, I idly observe. It shows. In any case, it was a pleasure visiting such a wonder. I will leave you to your sleep. I hope the others have prepared coffee. Goodbye, Ariane. Take care. And you too, I reply as Violet closes her eyes and fades into the background. I close my eyes and find myself back into the bedroom at the heart of the complex. I jump on one of the pillow stacks and drift to sleep. When Malusin and I climb out of the vault, we find one of Frost's men waiting for us. He clearly wishes he were somewhere else. We have found them. So soon? I ask with surprise. The man winces, and nervously scratches his short blonde beard. That is what Counselor Frost said. I do not have details. We order the man out while we change. We must wait for the sun to set to begin with. I put on my true armor, the one Loth made with the sigil on the chest. It looks just as deadly as the first time I tried it. Malusin gives me the stink eye when I look down on her own uniform, the now battered and hastily patched up dark leather armor she wore when her vassal died. The Lancaster crest has been summarily torn off. I note in passing that she and I share the same body type. We are clearly used to physical effort, but we still have some, padding. The main difference is that Melusan is really well endowed. Also, she is shorter, so there is that. And I obviously have the better posterior. Are you done ogling? You could not get a replacement for your armor? This one is barely holding together. When I exiled myself, the Lancaster took all my assets. She hisses. And you did not think to ask me? I retort with calm. You would have laughed in my face. Of course, then I would have helped you get a new armor. Our future is more important than our pride, Melusan, I sternly tell her. You are going to war in a wreck. This affects both our chances and our image, I continue. The grumbling Lancaster averts her eyes, before finally relenting. I apologize. I did not expect you to be so reasonable. I did manage an entire city for almost 2 decades if you recall. It taught me quite a bit about leadership and the importance of appearance. I was under more the whole time. Give me a break. Fair enough, I relent. How are you for weapons? She shows me. I have a short sword and a spare set of daggers, I tell her. Please? And thank you. In a gesture of unusual unity, we help each other bind our hair in tight braids that the wind will not disturb, then wait for nightfall. I leave a message to Mornay out of politeness, and then we ride. The Mudge goes first and his horse gallops through the dirty snow with commendable speed. I personally believe the poor beast is scared beyond reason, as it should be. Melusan and I may have donned heavy cloaks, but under them, the glint of weaponry is obvious. Our guide sometimes casts back a fearful glance as if the thundering hooves of Medas were not a sure way to tell what hounds his steps. It does not take us long to leave the city's mostly empty streets behind. Our passage elicits a few yelps of terror from the citizens still outside. I even see a woman cross herself. Luckily for her, we are after another quarry tonight. The ordered rows of houses soon fall behind us, to be replaced by endless farmlands now covered in a layer of snow. Smoke from fires lift up towards the sky from every direction as we move on, and where we pass, dogs whimper and hide. We go north then east until we are able to ride along the shore. After a few minutes, the Mudge slows down and we move alongside him. I did not realize it before, but his horse is shorter than even Xana, who is rather delicate herself, meaning that both Melusan and I look down upon him. We instinctively box him without the need to communicate. His horse sneezes softly. Why are we slowing down? I ask in a deceptively soft voice. My horse is tired, I can't push him like you do your, we're almost there in any case. The smell of fear. Melusan and I exchange a knowing glance, but take no further action. It would not do to provoke our allies too much. There is a small ship anchored nearby. The ferryman is waiting for us. Come. We turn right and follow our guide on a downward path through a dense copse of trees. As we reach the edge of the water, branches and exposed roots are no longer covered in snow, but instead encased in sheaths of solid ice that gives them an otherworldly look. They glitter like strange jewels under the diffuse light of the moon. We quickly exit the copse and find ourselves on a small, rickety pier hidden from sight. On it, a riverman wearing several layers of cloth to ward off the biting cold turns with anger, but his complaints die on his frozen lips when he takes in our appearance. Medas and Xana lazily step on the wooden skiff in perfect silence. The man swallows nervously and pushes away from the pier with commendable haste. I watch with interest as several large blocks of ice bump against the hull, but it appears that the placid current will prevent us from turning into a shipwreck. It would certainly kill neither Melusan nor myself, in any case. Once on the other side, our quiet guide resumes his pursuit and we soon leave any sign of civilization behind. The dense woods and pristine snow would make for a fantastic hunt were it not for the grunting mortal and his annoying light spell. Fortunately, I know that we will leave him behind soon, and I feel no need to eviscerate him for ruining my fun. Truly, I have mastered my emotions. They're here, our guide finally says. For a while, we have been following a set of horse tracks, and behind a rock, in a small depression hidden from the wind, we find the rest of Frost's group huddling around a campfire. I note in passing that the fire is hidden from view by some concealment spells that also blocks off their aura and, more importantly, their smell. Frost himself is sitting comfortably against a trunk, seemingly unbothered by the cold. Good evening, ladies. I hope you had a pleasant trip. Where are they, old man? I answer with a grin. I am quite impatient now. The tracks continue northward from here. They stopped trying to hide them, so you should have no difficulties. When you are done scouting, come back here and we will make our way back to the city together. Very well. Melusan? We hunt. The light behind us fades then disappears. The night, in all its glory. I wish Tauron were here, so that three of us could gallop and recreate that exciting nightmare ride. Perhaps another time. Trees after trees after trees. The odd rock. Sometimes, an irregularity in the landscape forces us to ride to a side where our quarry climbed. They are close now, I can feel it in my essence. When the sensation turns to a dull warning, I raise a fist and we stop, heeding the warnings of my intuition. Melusan and I dismount without a word and drift through the landscape as silently as shadows. Our feet touch the ground without leaving tracks, and no cliff can slow us down for more than a few instants. For a while now, we have approached a small mound and I can finally smell it on the wind. Werewolves. A pungent odor of dog, wet fur and human musk, as heady as it is unpleasant. Beyond the mere unpleasantness of it, their stench wakes in me the desire to find them and purge them, for we occupy the same niche, that of the apex predator. I spot Melusan frown with disapproval. She feels it too. Quietly, I make a circling gesture and we sprint perpendicular to the origin of the smell until we are downwind. An unpleasant necessity as we, too, have a scent. The landscape before us climbs to a ridge behind which our prey surely is. I find a flat rock some distance away that overlooks the field beyond and guide Melusan there. I climb first and use the promontory to survey the scene lying before me. Then I fall back, speechless. I almost bump into my companion who was on her way to join me. What is wrong? She softly hisses. You know that feeling when the order came at us in tryst chess? That realization that you are facing a threat you had not quite expected. Don't be ridiculous, there were hundreds of them. I silently point forward and Melusan lifts her head to get a good look. What the fuck? Indeed. Chapter 91. The werewolves have made camp in a basin nestled between the mound to our north and the ridge we stand on. The small depression hides the camp from sight, if not from smell, and bitter wind disperses the upward clouds of smoke of the campfires before they become visible. What shocks me is not the size of the camp, fully capable of hosting a good 200 men. No. What shocks me is the incredible level of organization displayed here. This is not a refugee camp or even a caravan bivouac. We are spying on a military installation. Most of the camp is made of large tents, not set in rows but evenly spaced across a good half of the basin. The materials used are heavy furs and tanned hides sewn together, and a sentinel stands before each entrance with their arms crossed. I do not see any cannons or armory, nor any smithy, which does not surprise me much. I have noticed that entities who possess an overwhelming physique often underestimate the usefulness of firearms. Or perhaps, they simply lack the means or training. Small comfort. The missing structures have been replaced by cages. Rows and rows of densely packed prisons filled to the brim with the huddled forms of transformed werewolves. Their listless bodies form an incredible tapestry of colored fur behind a foreground of gray metal, a quiescent organism made of hundreds of temporarily inhibited monsters. When that slavering mass is unleashed, nothing will remain in its wake. Walking at the edge of this massive jail, a man patrols, a great horn of some bony material hanging around his chest. The artifact's power echoes slowly across the mass of prisoners with some unknown effects. With his heavy mantle made of fur poorly sewn together, he looks like some shaman from the dawn of time. Finally, a command tent sits at the end of the camp opposite the cages, and in front of it stands the tallest werewolf I have ever seen. The creature easily tops 9 feet, and its muscular body is covered in thick dark hair now slowly drifting in the wind. Are those ferals? Melusan whispers as she points at the cages. I believe so, I reply. Some werewolves lose themselves completely to the curse and never transform back. My companion and I share a moment of unease. Turning rogue will forever be a threat hanging over our heads, and the sight of those lost souls only reminds us of the possibility of our own demise, not to external forces but to the darker part of our nature. There must be at least 200 of them. Agreed. Let us fall back for now. We return to the nightmares, taking extra care not to leave any trace nor to be spotted. The ride back to Frost Camp is morose, and for good reasons. We cannot stand against those numbers. I am confident that I can take on a dozen werewolf and come out unscathed, but the more enemies there are and the more likely it is that a single mistake will spell my doom. A single jaw firmly clamped on my arm means a dozen more all over my body by the time I can free myself. It means being trapped, overwhelmed, and dismembered. It will take more than 5 vampires to stand against such strengths, especially considering that 2 of us are courtiers. It will take a large force and a careful plan. It will also require a high degree of cooperation between Mornay's group and ours, a dubious proposal at best. Less than 48 hours into this operation and the situation is already desperate. Hundreds, you say? Mornay asks with a sneer as he reclines in his comfortable chair. We stand in an office that would look respectable if it did not still stink of fresh paint. Blake and the unnamed spawn stand at either side of him across the massive baroque desk while I am flanked by Melusan and Melitone. The prick did not even offer us a seat. I would never lie on such a serious matter, I retort with more bite than I mend. Lie? No. But hundreds of werewolves. From creatures that have never banded in groups larger than 3 until very recently? Alan's donk. And besides, did your bloodline not show issues with, let us say, clarity? He asks in a seemingly innocent tone. I flex and unflex my hands, claws hidden from their sight. I know Melusan enough to realize she is livid though she masks it well. By questioning my sanity, he is also insulting her, whose testimony backs my own. If we were not trying to work together, I would demand satisfaction right now. Unfortunately, there is no time for him to recover from the lesson I would impart. Nor do I really need to. This man is dead. I let the silence draw on, none of us moving in the slightest. Instead, I progressively release the hold I keep on my aura. So far, I had let Mornay's presence dominate the room as a courtesy, even if he was still flirting with the limits of what is politely acceptable. Now, my own power radiates outward with increasing pressure. The change is not fast enough to qualify as an outburst but still quick enough for the atmosphere to change, and the unspoken threat to be stated. Perhaps you would care to see for yourself? I ask after his grin has fallen a bit. And follow you alone into the wilderness? I think not, he retorts. Can't I just kill him? Disrespectful weakling. Are you refusing the speaker's aid, Mornay? Melitone asks coldly. She, too, has a low tolerance for stupidity. Of course not. You can assist if you wish. Now that our prey has been revealed, I shall face those pests and bring a swift end to the current troubles. And how do you propose to do that? Melitone retorts sweetly. Why, I shall run them down like the parasites they are, of course. A handful or a dozen, it matters not, they will fall before me. If the devourer spawn is too wary, she may watch from afar how extermination missions are conducted. He slams his fist on the desk in what I imagine is an attempt at appearing decisive, but in reality, looks more like the tantrum of an unruly child. I suppose I have grown too used to competence in the past few weeks. Mornay merely reminded me of the vicissitudes of this world, where us rational beings must every day contend with the malicious and the dim-witted. Very well, I reply, we will join you when you make your move. I conclude the meeting there, leaving immediately with my 2 companions in tow. Mornay's parting words are interrupted by a slammed door and we promptly leave his estate and its intimidated staff. As soon as we turn on the next street, both of them start at the same time. That asshole. Melitone begins while shaking her brown locks. I command you for your control. Melusan hisses, showing a bit of fang. I raise a hand to stave off their outburst. Not now. We need to get back to the inn first. The trip is considerably faster than normal, and I realize that I should have let them vent their frustration. As soon as we arrive, Melitone drags Frost into the conversation with the crafty old man, only too eager to listen to everyone's complaints. Mornay is a windbag and a moron. His sire should have stabbed himself in the heart on the day he chose that brainless twit to join the ranks of the Undying. She spits. In a way, I am pleased to see that politically motivated incompetence is not the prerogative of my bloodline, Melusine adds. And so on and so forth. After vociferating for a few minutes and letting Frost needle their aggression, they finally realize that I have remained silent. Are you not irate, Ariane? Melusine asks. He disrespected you on purpose, and quite cruelly at that. I am indeed calm, because I know for certain that my vengeance is already assured. I turn to the servant among us. Melitone, how likely is my victory should the entire den fall? I ask. She winces in return, and I have my answer before she can even reply. Well, if they all die and any of Lazaro's charges survive. Then we lose, I finish. Melitone only nods dejectedly as Frost decides to contribute. Not to mention that you will receive some unwanted attention from that clan those idiots belong to. If they perish and you don't, they will demand an inquiry. So, we need at least some of them to survive. Do you think we can win? Melusine asks. Win? I ask with disbelief. That would depend on your definition of winning. That gets their attention, and so I explain. We cannot possibly stop that horde if they all attack at once. Which they will. How about those reinforcements? Melitone asks. There are hundreds of werewolves. I am not even confident we could stop them in Marquette, even if I gave silver bullets to every militiaman and woman. Not without devastating casualties. Then what? I posit that. Melitone remains an outsider, and I must not forget it. She is on my side in everything but what truly matters, formal allegiance. I cannot reveal the darker parts of my plan in her presence lest she reports it to her sibling, while at the same time I need to show enough that she does not suspect too much of a hidden agenda. We will use the river. I begin. The others join and soon add their expertise and minds to my own until finally, we have a workable plan. I find it remarkable that no matter if by 10 miles or 1,000, being away from civilization and its lights always gives the illusion of infinity to the nocturnal landscape. Intellectually, I know that the dark frozen trunks and untouched snow do not go on forever, that a river flows at my back and that beyond it lies tamed land. It matters not. Here and now, we might as well be in the northern reaches of the world, where they say the night lasts for months. Mornay paces nervously in front of our small group. He wears the genuine plate armor of a strange make, a sign that he's at least taking this seriously. From time to time, he furtively takes a glance at my unmoving form. I repaired Melusine's attire as best as I could with the limited time I had and the tools I brought with me. Thankfully, vampire dexterity and speed can work wonders, especially backed by a bit of Cadiz essence for continued focus. She now looks half decent as her asymmetrical armor gives her a rebellious look, that of a pirate or highwaywoman. I will admit that it looks good on her. I also made sure she had proper greaves and gauntlets equipped. From experience, I can tell that werewolves will go for extremities on a moving target, so that they can bring it down. The additional protection should grant her a few more moments to break free before freakish jaws close in too deep and seal her fate. All in all, she looks like a fighter, if a scrappy one. I, on the other hand, look like a master. Loth's armor shimmers in the fleeting light of the torches held by Mornay's men, its exquisite details obvious to my peers. I also wear my half-mask and carry with me an assortment of weapons including Sivea's spear and my own wolf slayer. John's version of the massive arbalist is designed for absurdly strong mortals. Mine is designed for absurdly strong vampires. It is the same draw strength with a major difference. My slayer is a repeater. The bolts are stored in a long magazine stored on top of the central axis. A crank with pulleys allows me to wind back the wire like string without having to lower the weapon. It looks exactly like what it is, a siege weapon that should be operated by a crew and fired from crenellation at approaching shield walls. On top of that, I have a pair of 1-second fuse powder charges secured at my back, the ultimate way to clear a path. This is the werewolf hunt equivalent of being overdressed. I love it. With our tightly braided hair and matching blades, Melusan and I are the cold professionals to Mornay's mismatched group of dilettantes. Blake doesn't even wear proper armor. I hope she does not get caught too early. Eventually, Mornay's pacings fail to assuage his worry and he turns to one of the 4 mortals carrying torches who had the misfortune of accompanying us. "What's taking them so long?" he demands. The mortal obviously shrinks before his employer's attention. What a stupid question to ask. How could the mortal know? A leader should never reveal their fear. Mornay's master plan was to provoke the wolves into attacking him. We managed to find a roving patrol and he slew both untransformed wolves, one of them a woman, only to have one of his men drop the pair of severed heads at the camp's entrance with a formal challenge. I almost insulted him here and now for his dismal stupidity. It takes a considerable amount of willpower to remind myself that I should not waste my breath on a dead man. The mortals will be intercepted. The werewolves will smell and notice the severed heads. They will exact vengeance. Then, when they are ready, they will find us. Such an insult cannot remain unanswered. In any case, the messengers are lost and so are the mortals present here. Simply because Mornay did not believe us and felt the need to double down like the arrogant fool he is. As we wait for the inevitable tide, I reflect on his behavior. He does not believe that werewolves can assemble in large numbers because it never happened before. This is the sort of mistake I have also committed. I realized that until recently, I no longer believed that mages could take me down. Then Alexandria happened. Without David King, I would have died that day. We vampires are all guilty of the sin of pride. If mages have failed 20 times to end my life, the 21st attempt might be the one to succeed. They have all of eternity to try and they only need to win once. I must walk the edge between death and insanity, taking them seriously while still giving them a chance to survive a proper hunt. It does not take a genius in arithmetic to realize that no matter how small the odds, with an infinite amount of chances, success is assured. At some point, I will die. And here I am brooding again. I blink myself awake as a noticeable shift triggers my intuition. While before the world was uncaring, there is now a sense of anticipation on the wind. No, a sense of longing. An eagerness. I calmly load the crossbow, drawing a furious stare from Mornay and resisting the temptation to kill him right now and run while I can. Ariane, queen of mature self-control. I take a step forward. It happens quickly. No time for speeches. One moment, silence reigns. The next, snarls and grunts and pounded snow herald the coming of a pack, and the very next instant, the bipedal hybrids of wolf and man storm the clearing. I unleash the first bolt on the leading beast as the tide of fangs and furs rushes us in tight ranks. They're so close and so similar that I feel that I am not facing a group but a single misbegotten entity with more limbs than a centipede. Even their aura is but one wave of feral rage. It crashes against our own with blind obstinacy. Then there is no more time to think. I manage to shoot twice more, taking heads each time and slowing the massive bodies as the bolts pierce through the following member. Then I take my spear and stick it in the first wolf jumping on us, using the momentum to throw its massive body into one of its neighbors. I repeat the gesture again and again with mechanical precision, breaking the tide like a rock at the head of the formation. Behind me, the vampires instinctively gather in a wedge, supporting each other. Melusan's spells crash into the densely packed bodies in great fiery explosions, to my surprise. I did not know she could call fire. Both courtiers are pushed to our back so that we make a defensive circle while the torch carriers are swept away with brief cries of terror and pain. We fight back to back, lunging for devastating strikes before pulling back to the cover provided by our allies. Blake and the Spawn sometimes falter, but the trio of masters is more than enough to stem the tide and to compensate for momentary weaknesses. Savagery is answered by stern discipline and recklessness by surgical precision. Each of our blows either kills or maims beyond recovery. Every swipe throws one body into two more to hamper five. No matter how strong they are, we are deadly fighters with centuries of combined battle experience. And still, we bleed. The pack fights as one despite their apparent mindlessness. They blindside, feint, and distract with an ease that can only be born from instinct. They follow each other tightly so that one jumps over the other when the first one commits. They attack from multiple sides when they can and will always try for the weakest link or the overextended fighter. I am fine. I sometimes let glancing blows rake my armor without much effect when I want to use the momentum to strike elsewhere. Melusan manages to avoid most hits, though she gets a cut on her temple, and thick dark blood now drips down her cheek. The courtiers are not doing so well. They are already covered in wounds. Blake's left arm hangs limply by her side. Both Melusan and Mornay are forced to compensate, and in turn, so am I as I kick a corpse into the side of a roving pair. It happens. Vibration shakes the air, the powdery snow, and my very body. It comes with a low-pitched sound like a horn of impossible size. The intermingled auras of our quarry undergo a drastic change under the sonorous blast. From aggressive and unhinged, they turn dark and patient. The surviving werewolves bound away in every direction as they leave their fallen comrades behind. We are left alone on the field, with corpses spread at our feet. Blood and other bodily fluids turn the pristine meadow into a grisly battlefield. Silence descends upon us. As quickly as it came, the battle is finished, and yet even the bombastic Mornay does not declare victory. A blind man would know that this retreat is temporary. This was a scouting party. They found us, and now the rest will come. My intuition tells me that the situation has not reverted back to normal. If anything, the anticipation in the air is even thicker than before. The horn blasts once more, again seemingly coming from nowhere and anywhere at once. And again, a second time. Beneath our feet the ground trembles like a drum beaten in a low roll. Beyond the densely packed trees, something moves. I lightly jump to a nearby branch and grab it to get a better view. Far in front of us, two small ridges form a natural barrier, and in the small gap between them, I see quivering movement. This is the only warning I get before the horde crests over both ridges and punches through the gap at the same time. For an instant I am staring at the dark canvas of space dotted by a galaxy of twinkling stars before the illusion shatters, and the light is revealed to be nothing more than the moon reflected on hundreds of lupine eyes, all made frantic by bloodlust and the thrill of the hunt. A veritable tidal wave of creatures charges us in ranks so dense that their numbers obscure the ground. The drums we heard are their paws trampling the earth, and the cacophony of snarls and growls heralds the violence to come. I drop down and turn to Mornay. He is indecisive, paralyzed by inaction. I take one last good look at him and the incredulous fear he displays, then it is too late. The edge of the horde is upon us. I do not hesitate. I pull the first powder charge and throw it forward and to my side as the first wolves weave through the trees. Then I pick the wolf slayer and catch a few of the creatures in the mouth, just to topple them and slow the charge. The first wolves reach us on Mornay's side. He turns around to cover his spawn. The first charge explodes. I step back and grab one of Blake's arms as Melusan picks another. The courtier yelps in pain. Mornay realizes his flank is uncovered. He turns on himself and deflects a strike, but 10 more wait behind. Our eyes meet one last time as his companion falls under the combined weight of a dozen creatures. And then, the massive werewolf I had spotted in the camp surges and clips him in the flank before merging back into the massive bodies. A wall of claws and teeth overwhelmed the vampire's defenses in moments, his speed unequal to the task of stopping such numbers. He disappears under the melee with one last shriek, cut short as something finds his throat. Melusan and I dash away as I use the last charge to blast the land behind us. The wolves are fast, but not as fast as us. Or rather, they would not be if we did not have to worry about our charge. I got her, Melusan says in a clipped tone. I let her grab the girl in a fireman carry and she picks up speed. Blake does not resist. Her frantic eyes look behind us at the horde on our heels. One misstep and we die. I nod at the redhead. This is it. Now comes the next part of the plan, the difficult one. I will have to admit, I do not recall having this much fun without a run for a long time. The tension, the price should I fail. Exhilarating. I rotate to the right as Melusin accelerates to the left. I take out my pistols and fire into the coming crowd, aiming for eyes. My first shot kills a creature, but the second bounces against the orbit of a massive fighter. This one is so tough and muscular that even a silver bullet fails to achieve more than a light wound. It matters not. I am only doing this for the noise. It works as intended, with most of the horde hot on my heels. Most, but not all. I jump forward, landing on a low branch 24 yards away from the lead creature. The tip of the pack slows, all eyes fixed on me with a hungry stare. You think yourself strong. You have the numbers. I have everything else. Including patience. Hear it. Feel it. Know it. I roar. In my cry, I pour all the fury and disdain I can muster in a challenge that cannot be ignored, and the horde answers. Larger specimens like the one who survived the shot echo with deep howls, lower pitched and more tremulous than anything a real wolf could produce. Then hundreds of monstrous throats pick up the yowl and a deafening war cry. In their excitement, even the farthest creature returns to the fold so that they may hunt down the one who dared provoke them. I cannot help it. I laugh and laugh as I move through the forest with unmatched agility. I have been running through the woods since I stopped being a fledgling 2 decades ago, just for the unique pleasure it provides. I know for us. We are in my domain now and we shall run indeed. And so, we do. For a minute, then 2, then 5, I sprint between trees and rocks and branches. I ascend vertical cliffs as if they were flat and cross frozen ponds as if they were grass, while my pursuers scramble and slip in their mad dash. When the horde breaks up, I pick isolated targets and skewer them, licking the blood from my spear as they fall. And always, I laugh. This is a perfect moment. This is why we live, not just for power and influence and all those human things, but also for this primal instant when instinct and conscience will cease to struggle for control. One mind, undivided in perfection. The wind on my face and the ground beneath my soles. The horde at my back, as unstoppable as winter, but always one step behind, always a bit too late because they are flawed and weak. They were not made by a curious god to prey on the world, nor chosen by an ancient monster as a potential heir. They are but cursed men and women thrown at us by a fool who overreached, drunk on his provincial success. They are behind and there they will stay forever because they are not the apex predator. They are not me. And so, jaws clamp on empty air, claws flail and slip and muscular bodies fall to the ground in uncoordinated heaps. And they know it. After an indeterminate amount of time, the horn sounds once more and the pack slows down as we reach a clearing. I wait in the middle, fully exposed as the werewolves stop by the edge of the wood. Every bush, every tree conceals muscles like corded steel and yet, they do not move on. The imperious call of the horn proves too much. Time stops. For an instant, a gap in the landscape gives me a clear view of a scene 100 yards beyond the impassable line of monsters. The black wolf with disabled Mornay stands next to a man clad in thick pelts holding a large horn made of bone, the very same who was guarding the ferals. They stare, and so do I. The man is the only one in human form, and yet I know that he's a werewolf. There is something in his stance and in the way his iris reflects the light that leaves no doubt in my mind. Then the moment passes, just as the wolves slowly start to withdraw. The horde disintegrates into shuffling clumps from the previously unified pack, still dangerous but nothing like they were before. I wait until the last straggler disappears in the shadows of the trees. It is done. I take a few moments to center myself and to focus on the quickly fading impressions that course through me. This was great and I need to remember. I need to cherish this moment. I only hope the rest of the plan went without a hitch. It takes me several more minutes to find the river. I even had to find a tall tree to spot a hole in the forest. For once, the Detroit River's languid flow does me a disservice, as its quiet nature leaves little way for me to hear it. Eventually I find the shore and manage to orient myself, quickly running to one of the two hidden piers prepared for the occasion. I take the arranged rowboat and make my way across, cursing against the occasional slab of drifting ice. It takes me another 5 minutes before I arrive at Frost's camp. If I did not know it was there, I would have missed it. A large circle of basic runes hides it from oral perception and smell, while the location naturally blocks sight and sound. As soon as I enter the perimeter, Frost stands up from his position near a central fire. Blake follows suit, looking dazed. "Good you're here. Is Melusen not with you?" the old man asks. I stop in my tracks. "What do you mean not with me?" "We split up so that she could evacuate Blake. They were supposed to cross the river together. A small group of wolves followed us," the courtier answers in a hesitant voice. "She stayed at the pier to stave them off." "I thought I attracted all of them," I hiss. "Well, I am going back." I turn around to the small pier under the mage's incredulous stares. "Careful, Ariane, those who came after us were not ferals," Blake warns. "It matters not." I sit in the rower seat only for Frost to lower himself in front of me. He removes a strange contraption from his pocket, something between a dream catcher and a compass. The artifact tastes like tracking and searching, not in my way, but in a more methodical and rational mindset. A bit like a Rosenthal hunt. "Well, what are we waiting for?" Frost asks. I frown, yet also start rowing. "I am surprised by the intensity of your reaction, Ariane. I did not expect Melusen and you to be close. You should already know that I do not simply discard an ally in need." "And what about Mornay and Reynold? They were not allies in need then?" "There was nothing I could do," I reply with a shrug. "I did not even know that the spawn's name was Reynold." Frost nods, pretending to be thoughtful. Then, after 10 more seconds, he continues. "It is fortunate that Blake made it. When pursuing a line of questioning, you should be wary of what you may find at its end," I interrupt. Frost raises his hands in mock surrender, but I give him no recognition. He is too eager to poke and prod for no discernible gain. I am amazed that he still lives. Naturally. The following minute is spent in silence as I focus on dodging the ubiquitous pocket icebergs and Frost tinkers with his bauble. I realize that the cold is absolutely biting, yet my companion seems unbothered. If anything, the frigid wind pools around him. I almost crash into the pier because of my speed and lack of attention. I climb down and inspect my surroundings. The forest around us is quiet, though the scent of werewolf blood is still strong. I notice that there are no corpses despite a suspiciously large pool, which means that our foes picked them up before leaving. The pier itself is mostly untouched, but here and there, branches and trunks have been marked with the telltale signs of claws and pyrotechnics. The devastation follows the shore downstream. I follow the trail in silence with Frost on my tail. The land is empty of life, and there are no auras besides our own. No signs of Melusen, so far. As I walk, I realize that my erstwhile bitter enemy took a significant risk by acting as bait, and I am reminded of the one prophecy I had in my life so far. The one about forgiveness. I am ashamed to admit that I have, in fact, forgiven her. We have both grown quite a bit since New Orleans, and she has been instrumental in the success of tonight's operation. I really hope she made it. 50 yards down, the traces of conflict abruptly stop. "Do you think she went into hiding?" Frost asks. "No, she would have had to kill the entire group for that, and no werewolf died here. There would be tracks of a massive body on the ground. I check around but see no signs of Ash, which is a good start. Where is she then?" I look at the river. She probably followed the flow as a backup plan. Werewolves are too heavy. They sink, and they are sensitive to cold. Vampires do not need to breathe, and we do not fear low temperatures. She jumped in. "I do not think so," I reply as I find a particularly deep set of tracks. "I believe she was thrown." She could be too exhausted or wounded to save herself, even if she survived. I decide to continue heading downstream. I have no idea how far she could have been carried, if she was. I start scrutinizing the waters for any sign of an anomaly. I even sniff the air and pick up a queer scent. There is a werewolf farther along the path, I inform Frost, who is still tuning the artifact. When he hears my warning, he removes his hand from his pocket. Frost's gauntlet is as white as its namesake. A single ruby is inserted halfway on the back, between his knuckles and his wrists. It glows ominously. We continue carefully but soon realize we need not have bothered. The scent comes from a prone form at the edge of the shore. Smoke wafts from the pale naked body of a young adult, a proof of the werewolf's impossible metabolism. He is breathing fast and shivering while his aura flickers weakly. Do we finish him off? He will be too weak to talk, at least for a while. Frost asks. I do not know how he can be so sure, but I trust him. No. I have another use for him, I say, looking out again. You want to jump in? Yes. If Melusan fell in, she would be around here if my assumption is correct. Then take it, he replies as he hands me his compass. This is the tool I used to track the werewolves. I recalibrated it to find vampires instead. Will it work underwater? Yes, and if your ally is unconscious, she will not try to restrain her aura. I nod, and jump. Even if I expected the cold, I am still disoriented by the sensory overload that comes with it. I take a moment to recover and look around. Seaweed. Rocks. Debris. The odd fish. No sarcastic Lancaster. No, focus Ariane, you have a tool, use it. I take out the compass and realize that the thin blue needle is pointing at the nearest vampire. So, me. I curse but realize that Frost cannot be this stupid. Below the needle, I find a single gem that I can press. I do so now and note that the next target is behind me, upstream. I quickly swim and find Melusan's body near the bottom, huddled against the large rock. A thin trail of black blood emerges from the back of her head where her skull was crushed. So that is why she is here. She must have landed headfirst into a block of ice and sunk, while the werewolf struggled to float and only managed to climb back to the shore a bit farther away. It is a simple matter to drag her back and I soon emerge from the depths a few feet away from a bemused Frost. An impressive show with that armor of yours, he comments, too bad about the seaweed in your hair. I sigh and remove the guilty piece of vegetation, but I cannot muster any form of annoyance. I am relieved that Melusan survived. I would have missed her. How is she? He asks. As long as she is not ash, she will be back to her posh and caustic self within the next hour. Convenient. Frost discarded his coat to cover the shivering body of our prisoner. I grab underneath for an arm, and at the moment I succeed, the young man's eyes flash open. They are a warm brown with flecks of green in it. Rather pretty. He sniffs the air, surprised. You smell weird. He comments, frowning. Then he yelps when I bite his wrist. What is it with people taking such liberties to comment about my hygiene and appearance, huh? Go waddle in the muck and you will smell strange too. Bah. With the wolf's expression slackening, I bring his bleeding appendage to Melusan's lips and let the carmine liquid trickle down. The redhead shifts and soon, ravenously latches on the wound. She stops as soon as she regains consciousness. Slowly, she opens her jaws and releases her still-breathing captive. Melusan, I begin as a greeting. You saved me, again, like last time. You are not going to battle again without some sort of helmet. Agreed, she concedes with a bitter chuckle. Melusan does not stand up. A bad sign. We normally dislike being in a position of vulnerability. And although I appreciate the trust she shows, it also indicates that the ordeal has taken a toll on her. When I saw you above me, it reminded me of last time. It scared me. I feared to turn around lest I see him again. My Arthur. I am sorry, Melusan. Oh, don't be. By the eye, this is ridiculous. I really thought I was done for this time. I remember every detail of my fall into the water. The branches overhead. The wind. the claws against my armor. I even remember useless details, like how the beast stank of rank sweat. That's rich, coming from a ginger. Melusan pauses and I witness with some pleasure her face turn from mewling to its usual haughty self. Ariane, you are such a bitch. We both snort at the same time, and this time, she is smiling. Thank you, she says. Ladies, if you don't mind doing this later? Frost comments. He is right. We are in hostile territory. I almost forgot about that. You really could not save them? Melitone asks firmly with just a hint of suspicion. Around us, the mages are packing their belongings in preparation for our retreat back to the city. But you could save Blake? She continues after a pause, looking at the woman sitting near the fire. I carefully maintain a neutral expression, mirrored by Melusan. Blake was already wounded, and she is but a young courtier. Wrestling a reluctant master would have been a different proposal altogether. As for his spawn, he was the first to fall. Melitone considers my words with clear unease. My testimony is perfectly believable, but the death of Mornay is simply too convenient. Almost as if I had planned from the beginning to let him die with his spawn so that the leadership of the den falls on Blake, who would be much more, shall we say, malleable, than her predecessor. Melitone, I told you that this attack was suicide. I saved whomever I could despite the odds. We were facing a veritable wall of cursed flesh, fangs and claws out there. I give you my word on this, once they were upon us, there was nothing I could do. You can ask Blake if you do not believe me, I continue. Technically, I could have tried to convince him to leave or dragged him away and hoped he would follow, thus promoting the interests of the Speaker of the Accords and Clan Roland. I did not. Lord Cerrone proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that ours is a merciless world where self-interest rules. I am no fanatic in the service of Constantine, nor am I some sort of benevolent savior to risk my life for others of my kind. I am here to protect my own interests and those of my friends, and Mornay resolutely placed himself in the list of disposable assets. He was not my ally, and I did not have an agreement with him. Indeed, my agreement was, and still is, with Constantine himself. Also, Mornay was a prick. And so, for convenience and for insulting me, he had to die. Now, with the leadership firmly in my hands, we can finally work on a proper plan. Melitone nods, admitting that my explanations make perfect sense, and here lies one of the most valuable lessons of the night. I swore that I could not help the deceased as the tide overran our position, and I told the truth. That does not mean that I could not have intervened before. Vampires seldom ever break their oaths as the price is too high. Similarly, if I swore I believe something is true, then unless I twist in pain on the ground as the words leave my mouth, I did not lie. The abyss between the absence of falsehoods and a faithful rendition of reality is so vast that I understand why we are loath to bind our foes and allies in complex contracts. The more we abuse it, and the more the victim will struggle for a way to wiggle out of their bounds like the proverbial genie. And so, I am left in charge after letting nature follow its course. Blake, you must return to Detroit and evacuate your people. What? Like it or not, you are now the de facto leader of the local den. The werewolves may come to town tomorrow as we slumber, and our meager defenses will not stop them, even if they keep to their human forms. We must leave and retreat to a fallback position. I have reinforcements waiting outside of town. Their camp will do. Right. Then what? Melitone asks, looking a bit lost. Then the boy and I will have a conversation, I announce as I kick the prisoner by our feet, and once we are done, we will finally understand the true nature of what we are facing.